Ah, Barry the Brick, my arch nemesis. Are you ready to clash steel? Prepare thyself. We shall call this a draw, worthy adversary. Out. I love these tiny little sword keychains that a fan of mine gave me years ago. They're all of Zoro's swords, so even like Yubashiri. And yeah, they fit Barry like perfectly. I love that. Okay, so let's talk swords, shall we? A lot of talk about swords in Wano, and a lot of talk about swords in the last chapter. We found out some more stuff about the Ringo customs, how when someone is born in Ringo, they are given a sword that they will use later in life to carry them along the path of the samurai of Bushido. And then when that samurai dies, they use the sword as a grave marker for them to be entombed for all eternity in the frosted, frozen wastelands of Ringo. Ryuma was one such samurai. He was, of course, referred to as the sword god, but in the latest Vivre card that talked about him, we found out he actually did hail from the Ringo region. So this makes sense. So yeah, that's all about Ryuma, and actually I'm gonna go back to that Vivre card that talked about him in a minute, but first I want to talk about his blade, Shusui, alright? So also in the last chapter, at the very end actually, Hiyori respectfully asks Zoro for a favor, if he could please return the holy sword Shusui to its rightful resting place in Wano. Zoro responds pretty much the exact same way he responded every other time that someone tried to take Shusui from him in this arc. Screw you, this is my sword, I want it back, okay? And you know, honestly speaking, Zoro should have been a little bit more careful with Shusui ever since he came to Wano. Like, remember the first time Kinemon saw that he had this? When they were sailing from Punk Hazard to Dressrosa? When Kinemon saw Shusui in Zoro's possession, he immediately took out his own swords and started clashing with him. Zoro had to calm him down and explain to him the circumstances for him getting this, like he didn't actually rob the grave or anything like that. But still, I mean, it's not just on Zoro either. Kinemon, when they first arrived at Wano, he should have said to him, like, Zoro Juro, you know, I don't care if you walk around, you know, the flower capital with, you know, your katanas. That should have also been a kind of a problem because katanas are not allowed in Wano, but whatever. He's like, yeah, I don't care if you walk around with your swords, the Wado and the Katetsu, but you cannot be walking around the flower capital with Shusui. This is a famous sword. Everybody knows about it. Everybody knows it's been stolen. They know what it looks like. If you are spotted with this, it is going to be bad news. All right, so I kind of blame both of them there for walking around the capital with this thing to begin with. You think he should have, like, kept it somewhere safe. Now, you know, Zoro might have been aware of this, and he was like, screw you, I'll just worry about it if it happens, right? And it did happen quite a few times. The magistrate, and then the whole thing with Gyukimaru, who took it and returned it to its rightful resting place. But when Hiyori asks Zoro to return it, you know, she doesn't say to do it for free. She offers a trade. She says, okay, listen, if you give us back Shusui, I will offer up my father, Kozuki Oden's prized blade, Enma. Enma just being the guardian of the underworld in Japanese mythology, but it is stated to be the one and only sword, maybe the one and only weapon in existence capable of harming Kaido, because it's the blade that caused the large scar on Kaido's body, like right around like here, like in his stomach area. Probably whenever he turned into a dragon, Oden was fighting with him. That was probably an epic boss fight that I would love to see at some point, and he sliced Kaido, and he probably had advanced armament hockey, and he was able to slice through his scales, and that what's caused the scar. And then after that fight, maybe something through maybe what Orochi or maybe his band did, or maybe something that the Beast Pirates did. I like to think that Oden got defeated because of some underhanded tactic. Like, I like to think that Oden was actually succeeding and maybe fighting back against Kaido. Like, he already had a blade that was capable of damaging him, and if you could bring up to me, like, okay, who are the people that are capable of defeating Kaido? I would probably tell you the other Yonko, you know, like Shanks, you know, Whitebeard maybe, of course, when he was still alive, you know, like some of the really strong Marines, like maybe Sengoku or Garp going up against Kaido. That would be a cool fight, right? But also, like, the Master Samurai of Wano. I mean, we don't know much about Oden, but he seems to be kind of a biggity badass from the setup, you know? So I'm like, okay, maybe he was fighting it back against Kaido, and then they did something, and that's how he's ended up getting captured and getting boiled alive, apparently, okay? So that's the offer that's on the table right here. Now, we don't know the meitou grade of Enma. We can most assuredly figure it does have a meitou grade, because I don't think, Enma would have been able to cut down Kaido if it didn't have a rank. I mean, maybe it could have, but we're in the realm of meitous right now, okay? I like to think Enma is one of the Saijo Owazumonos. I think Oda's really gonna gear up to start revealing all 12 of those, because, you don't have to reveal all 50 Ryu Wazumonos or all 21 Owazumonos. I mean, if you want to do that, Oda, I would love it, but I think there's only 12 of the Saijo Owazumonos. I think Oda can reveal those 12. We know about Whitebeard's Cloud Cutter. We know that Yoru, Mihawk's Blade, is one of them. I like to think that Shanks' Griffin is also one of them. We know the Shodai Katetsu, the very first Katetsu, that's one of them. And if Enma's one as well, I mean, that would be fine with me, okay? And then Zoro can get a Saijo, alright? So, let's talk about this. Let's talk about if Zoro is going to trade up his Shusui for a new blade, alright? Because that's something else that a lot of people have been hypositing, because we're in Wano right now, the land of samurai. This might be the place Zoro gets a new sword. It doesn't happen very often in One Piece, and usually the only reason he gets a new sword is because another sword broke. The reason he got his Katetsu and his Yubashiri back at Logtown was because Mihawk shattered both of his random katanas at the Barrage. And then later on, in his fight against Shu at Eni's Lobby, Yubashiri got destroyed, it got rusted out, and that's why he had to obtain Shusui when they went to Thriller Bark, okay? So, this would be unusual. Unless another blade shattered, this would be the first time Zoro just decided to trade a sword for another sword without it being previously broken to him, okay? Now, many people have brought up, Zoro is not going to budge on this thing. He's not just going to hand over Shusui lightly. And I completely agree with that. I mean, from all the crap he's done up until now, and the fact that with his exchange with Ryuma at Thriller Bark, right now in the story, I don't think he's just going to hand it over to Hiyori. Now, I like to think there's going to be a moment here where we're going to sit down and talk about the past of Ryuma, and this is going to tie back into something being very relevant with the present storyline, alright? I'm not really sure what that's going to be. Now, going back to the Vivara card a little bit, talking about Ryuma. His epithet in the Vivara card, we find out that it was the Sword God, but there was also Shimosuke. Shimosuke, it seemed to be more of an actual epithet than a last name. Many people have just assumed that it was Ryuma Shimosuke was his full name. That doesn't seem to be the case, 100% confirmed. Shimosuke means Frost Moon, and it's the last name of Yasuie and Ushimaru. Ushimaru being the daimyo of the Ringo region back in the day, Yasuie being the daimyo of the Hakumai region, the northern areas of Wano, okay? Now, Shimosuke is also the name of the village where Zoro grew up, and there's a connection to Koshiro there. Now, Shimosuke also, there's a lot of meanings to Shimosuke. There's a lot of references and callbacks. Shimosuke is also the traditional Japanese term for the month of November. All of the months in Japanese, they have like a version, like right now you could say them as, like for example, it'd be, Ju, Ichi, Gatsu right now would be November. Literally just 11th month. That's how the months are in Japan. So just Ichi Gatsu, Nigatsu, Sangatsu, and that's just all the different months, January, February, March. There's a traditional way of referring to the months, Shimosuke, Frost Moon, or the month of Frost in Japan. That's November, okay? So there's a lot of different callbacks here, but it's possible that maybe his epithet might have been Shimosuke, and Ryuma in that Vivara card, we find out that his birth month was in fact November, so there's another reference there. Maybe he had the title of Shimosuke 400 years ago, and maybe a clan was formed that took the name Shimosuke as one of Ryuma's epithets, so the epithet came first, then the family, then the clan that Yasuie and Ushimaru were part of. So Ryuma might have been the founder of that clan. That might have been another way of looking at it. So technically a member of the family of Shimosuke, but not like he was just a random member. He was the founder of it. And also, I wanted to bring this up, and Artur mentioned this in his chapter analysis, but the silhouette that we get of Ushimaru in the last chapter, because we only see him, one side of his face, It kind of looks similar to Zoro. He seems to have a scar over his right eye. Zoro here has a scar over his left eye. Ryuma looks very similar to Zoro. Ushimaru looks very similar to Zoro and Ryuma, considering. So I don't really know how I would feel about that if we find out that like Ryuma is Zoro's long lost ancestor. I mean, I don't think we're going to find out much about Zoro's, like, parents in this arc the same way we found out about Sanji's parents in the last arc. But if you want to say, oh yeah, Zoro is descended from this really badass samurai back in the day, I guess I'd be okay with that. I don't see why he has to be, like, to be a cool swordsman. But, okay, if that's the way you want to do it, Oda, I guess I'm okay with that. I don't really see that many things wrong with that there. So, I wanted to talk about Ryuma on Thriller Bark here, alright? Because this is something I brought up in the review. I was a little bit dubious. I was starting to call into question exactly, you know, does the Ryuma that Zoro fought, the zombie Ryuma that Moria brought back with Brook's shadow, does that Ryuma retain the memories of the Ryuma from days past, you know? And so I went back and I watched the episode where they fight, and I also read a few of the chapters where Ryuma appears. And just knowing what we know about the Kage Kage no Mi, it really does seem that he doesn't retain all of the memories of his past. A lot of times when you listen to the way that Ryuma speaks, it's interesting because it's Brook's shadow that's animating him, so he talks very similar to Brook, and even has the same interests as Brook. In that Vivara card, it was revealed that Ryuma's favorite food was curry, which is also the same, you know, favorite food that Brook likes because it's his shadow. He has the same laughter style as Brook. He uses the same techniques, the same sword attacks, like the rapier fencing style that Brook uses. So a lot of the times when he's speaking, though, he seems to be referring to Ryuma sort of in the third person, kind of like, you know, this is the body of the famous samurai from Wano. Like, he's aware of what the body is, you know, he's aware where it comes from and whose body it is, but he doesn't exactly speak in the way that it is himself. It really does seem like it's Brook's essence animating the body, and the essence is aware of who Ryuma is. Maybe another way of looking at this is when a shadow of someone else animates a corpse, there's sort of like a mix. Some of the shadow, you know, retains like what it knew from Brook's existence, and then the body kind of remembers what it was like when Ryuma was alive. But it's not like a perfect resurrection. It's not like, you know, Ryuma would be able to recall every event from his past. And a good way of looking at that is whenever Ryuma was brought back with this power of the Kage Kage no Mi, you know, he doesn't use any of his own techniques. He has to borrow techniques from Brook. All right? It doesn't seem to be just a superficial thing like, oh, he uses the same laughter style as Brook. Yo-ho-ho-ho! No, it really does seem like, yeah, it's Brook's, you know, it's not his soul, because souls are something different than shadows, but it's like, you know, his essence animating the corpse, okay? And later on in that Vivara card that was just revealed, like this information we just found out a few months ago in that Vivara card, we find out that his body was not even close to being as strong as it was in his prime. That was something you have to keep in mind there. And I actually like that piece of information because Zoro pre-time skip was kind of evened out with Ryuma, and Ryuma is being built up to be this sword god, amazing, badass character. I mean, you don't get the term sword god. That's a big deal, right? So then you look back, he's like, okay, sword god, but he was able to kind of be even keel with pre-time skip Zoro back during Thriller Bark. That Vivara card spells out that that was not even close to being as strong as Ryuma was in his prime. Not just because of the fact that he wasn't using his own sword techniques, it really did seem to indicate that, yeah, his body was still pretty strong. And I'm sure Hogback, he did a few modifications to kind of bring it up to spec as much as possible, but it was still an animated corpse, alright? It was still, like, lacking the muscles and stuff that Ryuma had in his life. So that was, like, a very powered-down Ryuma fighting against pre-time skip Zoro, and they were about even. That was to the point where, you know, he was using, you know, Brook's techniques, like that thrust technique that basically acted like Zoro's, like, 36 caliber Phoenix, like, blasting holes in the wall. And Brook was even surprised by that. He was like, oh no, that thrust technique doesn't have nearly as much power as when I use it. So yeah, from, another perspective looking at it, Ryuma was not weak when he was a zombie, but they didn't have any point of reference. They didn't see him as strong as he was in his prime, okay? So anybody out there that might be upset maybe a little bit that Zoro was able to cut down Ryuma, who is this sword god, that's the reason why he was able to do it, right? Then, of course, you have the scene when Ryuma is set ablaze by Zoro's technique, and he's kind of just standing there, and once again, the way that he's talking, he seems like it's like Brook's essence inside Ryuma being upset that he failed this body of this famous samurai. I think the way that he phrases it is just like, how I feel shame that I've, let the body of this once famous samurai perish in this way. Some kind of context like that. And Zoro says, well, at least as long as you feel shame, then it's fine as a swordsman. And then that's when, Ryuma holds up his Shusui and he's like, this blade Shusui, its story will not end. And that's when he sheaths it and he tosses it down to Zoro and Zoro grabs it, right? It really did seem like, basically think of it not as like a perfect clone of Brook, but basically the shadow of Brook, an essence of Brook. And, Brook is also a swordsman, and he's a very prideful swordsman as well. He's a different kind of style than Zoro uses, but still swordsman. And, Brook animating Ryuma's like, oh man, I had the body of this badass sword god samurai, and I was defeated. I feel kind of, saddened by that, but I still have this blade. Zoro, you take this blade, and then you carry on its legacy. Better than, I could. I, in the sense of, like, better than me, the essence of Brook, the shadow of Brook, could ever do. And then that's when he gives it to him. So, in that respect, was it Ryuma that actually gave Zoro Shusui? Kind of. I know! It's so confusing! I mean, like, kind of is and kind of isn't. Like, Ryuma did not appear as like a... Because later on we find out about the soul fruit that Big Mom used, right? And whenever she creates the homies, their memories of when they were alive, they're kind of like suppressed, but they're still there. Because whenever Pudding did that, ability, that flashback ability with her memory of fruit, she was able to recall the memories from all those homies. So it really does seem that, like, when you rip out the soul of an individual, that retains the memories of when they were alive. When you rip out the shadow of an individual, that retains their personality and their speech and their fighting powers and their fighting techniques and stuff. But it seems like their memories aren't the same exact thing. Or if the memories are going to be there, they're going to be the memories of the person who originally had the shadow. Ryuma's body is a corpse. Its soul is long gone. It might retain some memory of the body itself, but nothing concrete. Like, you can't take Brook's shadow, throw it into Ryuma, and then sit Ryuma down and like, okay, Ryuma, please explain all the details of your life ever since you were a little kid. I don't think the reanimated Ryuma would be capable of that, okay? From what we've kind of seen, how Ryuma spoke to Zoro. And I really hope Oda clears this up, by the way. I really hope that we find out that, like, yeah, that Ryuma I fought on Thriller Bark, he definitely did have the memories of the real Ryuma, or he definitely didn't have the memories of the real Ryuma, or they were, like, they were scattered in some way, or they were mixed with Brooks. I hope they explain this in some way, right? So, I think, though, after they sit down and maybe explain the story, between Zoro and Ryuma, and maybe if Zoro remembers Ryuma and how he talked back at Thriller Bark, maybe that might give him, okay, maybe I should turn this blade over. Once again, it's going to be a tough call. I kind of do want to see Zoro get a Saijo Owazamono blade. The other option on the table, the other ideas was he was working his way up the Katetsu lineage. That's an old theory that's been around for a while, but since the Shodai Katetsu's in the hands of a Gorosei, and, that's kind of far and removed, it might not be the actual Shodai, but from what we see, it kind of is. So that might be kind of difficult for him to do that. But the Nidai Katetsu is definitely in Wano. We've seen that before. So, I mean, I'm throwing out the idea that he might just get 2 new blades. You know, he might trade in Shusui, get Enma, which is his Saijo, and then trade in Kitetsu the third for Kitetsu the second, which is an Owazamono grade sword. So then that way, he would have a Saijo and then 2 Owazamonos. He would have his Wado. He's always got to have his Wado. He can never trade in the Wado, okay? But then he would get the Nidai Kitetsu, which was an Owazamono, and then he would get Enma, which was an Saijo. Something else. That's a lot of this video. Something else. That I heard around in the water cooler is that Enma should not go to Zoro. Enma should be a blade that should go to Momo or Hiyori, because they are the children of Odin. Alright, so that should be their swords to have. That shouldn't be Zoro's to keep. Odin gave it to Hiyori. We don't know the whole exchange there, exactly how the sword went from, like, how did Odin go from slicing, you know, Kaido open, and then that sword ended up in the hands of Hiyori? We don't know. Maybe Toki grabbed it, and then kind of like a Samurai Jack moment where, you know, Jack's mom gives Jack the katana. You know, maybe some deal like that where Toki gets it and then gives it to Hiyori, or maybe even doesn't give it to Hiyori because Hiyori was kind of young at that time. She was only 6. Maybe Toki told Hiyori where the sword was hidden, where she hid it. Probably in the temple of Enma that we saw in the Hakumai region. Maybe it was buried under the floorboards, or there's like a secret vault under that temple, the Temple of Enma, where Enma actually rests. That might be a safer bet than actually giving it over to a 6-year-old. I mean, I guess, you know, Kawamatsu was with Hiyori. Maybe Kawamatsu could have carried it, but he never referenced it. He never mentioned it. So I like to think Toki just told Hiyori where it was. Like, yes, your father's blade, Enma, it rests here in the Hakumai region. It is now your blade. Your father wanted you to have it so you can carry on the Kozuki lineage, right? And of course that breaks, you know, because like samurai are all men in Wano, and that's sort of maybe breaking the mold there a little bit, that Hiyori might get a blade and then she might maybe become the new shogun. It might not even be Momo, because Momo is a little kid right now, right? So it might be a situation where even if they defeat Kaido and everything, Hiyori might be the one to ascend to become the next shogun. I don't know. I mean, that's still up for debate exactly how Oda's going to go down that road with it, right? But also keep in mind, you know, Zoro has been told before that the Shusui is a very important blade to the people of Wano. Kinemon told him, Gyukimaru told him in one of the most recent chapters, you know, please, I cannot give you back that sword. I cannot. That's the sword of our god, essentially. But nobody has ever actually sat Zoro down before and told the whole story behind it and how important it is, right? So, you know, maybe after hearing the story, Zoro might still just be like, well, that was a great story. It's still my sword, finders keepers kind of deal. Or he might hear the story and might be like, man, maybe I really should turn this over, or something like that. I don't exactly know. Zoro is a very prideful swordsman. I like to think that he wouldn't, like would Zoro willingly offend an entire country of people just to keep a sword? I kind of want to say yes to that, you know? Like, it's just like, hey man, it's my sword. I've trained for 2 years with Mihawk with this sword. Let me keep this sword, right? There might be another reason why Hiyori wants Shusui. That's something I wanted to bring up. It might not just be Hiyori takes the sword and puts it back in a tomb. Maybe she needs it for something. Maybe there is something that her father or Toki told her, like, oh yes, we need Shusui to make this work. You know, there might be a going beyond, you know, Zoro. If Zoro turns out to be a living descendant of Ryuma, there might be another living descendant of Ryuma still hiding underground in Wano somewhere, keeping a low profile. Might be the son of Ushimaru. Might be Ushimaru. He might still be alive. Who knows? We still don't know what happened with him, right? So yeah, maybe Hiyori wants that blade because she knows somebody that would be like the rightful owner of it or something, or maybe he might be able to help out, or maybe it might be just a loan, maybe, because Hiyori hasn't really explained the whole premise of why she wants it. She just said, could you please return that to our country? I'll give you Enma. It might be like, well, if you give me this sword, I can give it to this person, and then I can give you Enma in exchange, and then maybe after this battle is over, we can figure out who really gets it. That might not be a bad way of doing that. So let's say that there is still a living descendant of Ryuma in Wano that's not Zoro. Okay, let's say it's Ushimaru. Let's just say he's still alive. He somehow survived and he's like lying low somewhere. Okay, whatever. Let's say that he gets his hands on Shusui, and then they do the whole fight with Kaido. Like, Zoro gets Enma, and Shusui's in the, the descendant of Ryuma's hands, and then they fight against Kaido, and let's say they win, and then that battle's over. And then let's say Zoro still wants Shusui. Like, he likes Enma, but he's like, Shusui is still my blade. Let's say the descendant of Ryuma and Zoro fought. And then at the end of that fight, the winner takes Shusui. Maybe that way would be that. It might not be a same, like, rehash of what happened with Ryuma at Thriller Bark, because now this is, like, a descendant of his in his, like, prime that can actually fight to the fullest extent with this blade. Maybe he inherited some secret sword technique that Ryuma passed. Like, if Ryuma had children, and we know Ryuma died, I think, at the age of 47, and he died of an illness. But if Ryuma had a family and had children, it's possible he might have passed down, like, his secret techniques to them. So a descendant of Ryuma that knows the techniques of Ryuma wielding Shusui, that might be that might be like the true test for Zoro's skills. And if Zoro wins, he keeps it. If Zoro doesn't win, then it stays in Wano. Maybe that would be a good way of finishing off the whole Shusui story arc here. Instead of Zoro just handing it back, or it getting stolen, or trading it for another sword, this is handled, through an actual battle. That's another way of looking at it. But yeah, if you just want my opinion, I want Zoro to get some new swords. I want him to at least get the Nidai Katetsu, whether that be because the Sandai gets broken. I mean, it's very possible it could get broken in this arc, and he gets a Nidai, and then he just walks away with Shusui Wado and a Nidai Katetsu. I'd be okay with that. If he wants to trade up 2 swords, and if he wants to get the Nidai plus the Saijo Awazumono, if Enma really is a Saijo, then I would be okay with that as well. I don't know. I feel like if he walked away from Wano with the same swords he's always had, I mean, I feel like that's a wasted opportunity for him to trade up. And considering also, I feel we're moving into the final saga of One Piece after Wano. Like, this is going to be endgame kind of shit afterwards. Zoro's going to need some of the best steel in the land. His Wado is a staple. Getting up there with Nidai Katetsu, that would help. And then also with a Saijo Awazumono sword, if with Enma, I think that would definitely be the weapons he would need for the enemies that are going to be coming down the line. If he's going to fight against Shiryu of the Rain and some other really strong opponents coming up, I think he would definitely need some stronger swords. But yeah, so let me know what you think about this. The whole Ryuma thing, the whole Zoro being related to Ryuma thing, the whole Ushimaru thing, the whole Shusui thing. There's lots of things. Why are there so many things? Hey, I gotta give Otis some credit. I mean, this is the land of swords and samurai. He's making the swords like a very relevant part of the story. They're not just background decoration. This is like as soon as we got to Wano, like the first chapter we were in Wano, where Zoro was being, tried and convicted for stealing Shusui. This kind of started off a little mini Shusui arc in the story. So, I mean, how's it gonna end, folks? We don't know. Find out next week on Dragon Ball One Piece. Do 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 do.